Years ago, this past week, a fire started high on a ridge west of Yarnell, Arizona. And the fire started in a boulder field in really steep terrain. So it was an area that there was no vehicle access to that area. And it was about a half acre in size. And the responders that came and saw it, they saw minimal fire activity there at the time and minimal spread potential as well. And they had some safety concerns with having firefighters on the hill overnight. So in consideration of that, as well as other factors, the decision was made to prepare for a full suppression the following morning. So to make a long story shorter, things didn't go exactly as anticipated. When the fire was finally contained 12 days later, over 8,300 acres had burned. 93 homes were completely destroyed. 2 days into that fire, on June 30, 2013, Friday was the 10-year anniversary of that day, the Granite Mountain Interagency Hotshot crew from Prescott, Arizona, which is where the town close to where our son and Loretta's mom live. They were kind of a unique hotshot crew. There was a lot of unique things about them. They had to work hard to get to where they were. They were deployed to work that fire, and they were, on June 30th in the afternoon, they were trapped when that fire changed directions. There were some significant weather patterns that changed, and the fire did things they weren't expecting and trapped them in this basin area. Matt and I hiked that a few years back and went to the site where that happened. In a last-ditch effort, they deployed their emergency fire shelters, but the fire was too much, and they all died. All 19 of them died in that fire. The only survivor from that hotshot crew was one guy that they had assigned as the lookout up on a hill earlier that day, and he had to evacuate. They had lost communications, and so he didn't know exactly where they were at the time, but he was the only one from their crew who survived that day. It was a sad day for that community, and it's a day that's still remembered, and I'm sure probably there were some memorial things going on there this week in memory of that. So how did that fire start? Does anyone know how that fire started? I spent 12 years volunteering as a firefighter up in Millersburg. And during that time, there was a guy by the name of Fred Sumter who was Indiana State Fire Marshal. And sometimes when it was, depending what the fire situation was, he would come and help investigate the fire afterwards. And I always enjoyed when he did, because I learned a lot from him about fire science and how to go back through and see what happened and understand it. But he always had a question at the beginning we often did a little debrief, and he always had this question. He said, "How did the fire start?" And after you had been through a few of his sessions, you always knew what he was looking for. He always had the answer on how that fire started. And his answer was a little flame that big. And that's the way the Yarnell Hill fire started as well. Actually, it started when lightning struck. A little flame that big turned into a huge inferno. James 3, verse 5, Marcus had a sermon on this not too long ago. And by the way, I thought about not preaching this sermon this morning. I felt like I should for some reason. And I thought about not, because Marcus just preached about it not very long ago, but I felt like I needed to for some reason. So we're going to look at that this morning. This is not our text, but James 3, in verse 5, it says, "How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire." That fire that started as a little flame like that destroyed those 8,300 acres, 93 homes, and took the lives of 19 men. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And verse 6 says, and the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. That Yarnell Hill started with that little flame that didn't seem like very much, and even when they got there and saw what it was, a half-acre fire, didn't look very threatening. But before long, it was that raging inferno that claimed the lives of 19 men, as well as 93 homes and a lot of land. I have a question for you children. Is fire good or bad? Bad? That's usually the answer I get. You know what? It's neither good nor bad. Did you know that? When we talk about bad things happening with fire, always our minds are thinking that fire is bad, don't we? But what about last winter when it was really cold outside? Did you like when there was fire inside your house, in your furnace? Yeah, I did. We don't have a furnace, but we have a boiler, and it's run by gas, and there's a little fire in there that heats up the water that goes through the radiators in our house and warms us up, and it feels so nice. When I come inside after being cold, sometimes I just like lay on top and hug that big. We have a huge radiator in our kitchen, and it gets so warm, and it just goes deep into your bones when you just hug that thing. Feels so good. In the case of the Yarnell Hill fire, fire was not a good thing, was it? Not for those people who lost their homes, not for those people who lost their lives or those people who lost their loved ones. But in the right place, used the right way, fire is a great thing. I like it a lot, especially for cooking food. I like food. And I like it a lot when it's cooked just to perfection. Fire is great for that. Fire is a tool, and when it's used correctly, it's very useful. When it's used carelessly, it can be very, very destructive. Words are very much the same way. Proverbs 18:21, which is our text this morning. And by the way, this sermon is going to be very simple and straightforward, and maybe shorter than you're used to my sermons being. It's kind of the way I feel about that. Gonna ruin my reputation. If you didn't hear that, someone said, uh-oh, a little child said, uh-oh. I don't think they were talking about my sermon, though. All right, Proverbs 18, verse 21 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruits. Some translations say, at least one that I know of, I think the New Living Translation says, those who love to talk will reap the consequences. For that last part, those who love it will eat its fruits. And I think that's probably what was intended there. Those consequences can be good consequences, or they can be bad consequences or undesirable consequences, depending on how our words are used. Like fire, words can be weapons of mass destruction. I think we've probably all seen words kill friendships, kill marriages, reputations, our Christian witness. I've seen words destroy people's witness for Christ. In extreme examples, like maybe Adolf Hitler, for example, or even more recent examples of mob mentality, words can be used to incite all kinds of violence and get people all stirred up to do crazy things. I know people who were so deeply hurt by words that it changed certain aspects of their lives from that point on. People who won't do certain things that they enjoyed doing before because of words that someone said. Or people that do unhealthy things because of the impact of words that someone said. I know people who don't want to hear anything about the good news of Jesus because of words that someone had said that hurt them. I know people who don't want to have anything to do with church because of words that someone said to them that hurt them. So words can be very, very destructive when they're not used carefully, when they're not used properly. Words can also be used positively in powerful ways. Proverbs 15, verse 4 says, "A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit." A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Words can help to heal hurts. Words can cause a lot of hurt, but words can also help to heal hurts. Words can facilitate the mending of relationships. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And words can be part of that. Words probably most of the time need to be part of that, mending relationships. Words can build relationships. Words can bring hope to despair. Words can encourage. Words can build up. Words can teach truth. And words can spread the good news of Jesus Christ to a lost and dying world. Proverbs 12, verse 18 says, "There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." I think that verse does a really good job of showing the difference between when they're used well and when they're used carelessly or even maliciously. There have been times when I've hurt people's feelings or hurt people with my words, sometimes because I used them carelessly. I wasn't careful enough, and I didn't think through what I said, and I hurt people because of that. Sometimes because I didn't really care too much. There's one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. I like that verse. So what makes the difference between those two? What makes the difference for the way that I use my words? There's a verse in Luke chapter 6, verse 45 that I think gives the answer to that. It says, "The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks." Most of the time, what comes out of our mouths, the words that we speak, are actually a reflection of what's already inside of us. So when we do things, say things that are upbuilding and edifying and good and help to build other people up, it's a good indication that either we're really good at putting words together, but more likely it's an indication that that's where our heart is. We care about people, and we want to see people do well. We want to see them grow. We want to encourage them. But when we say words that are destructive and do damage to people and hurt people, most likely that's already what's inside of us, and it's just coming out through our mouths. So when we do that, it's a good idea to take a look deeper, not just say, "Oh, I don't want to say that again." Take a look at what caused those words to come out of your mouth. And there are so many ways that we can do that. We can do that through harsh words, just becoming angry and saying things without first filtering them. Sometimes it's things like what we call gossip. We like to be the one to share the stories, and sometimes that can be so hurtful to people that we're talking about. We need to be careful about that. Sometimes that happens from telling things that are not true or half true, those kinds of things. We need to be careful about that. Out of the abundance of our heart is where the mouth speaks. So take a look at your heart. If you want to use the tool of words wisely and not set a whole forest on fire, with your words. I told you this was going to be very simple and straightforward and short, and I'm at the end already. I want to give you an opportunity to share at the end, though. But this verse that I want to end with is this, Psalm 141, verse 3. And it says, "Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth." I need a guard over my mouth. Sometimes things come out that I didn't intend to come out that way. By the way, not only the words that we speak, but the way we say them. The way we say them makes a big difference. There's a huge part of communication that isn't actually the words themselves, but the way that we say them. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. And that's my prayer this morning for myself, that God will set a guard over my mouth and keep watch over the door of my lips. Help me to think about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And even more, take a deeper look into my heart to see why I'm saying what or wanting to say what I'm wanting to say. And allow Jesus to guide my mouth. That's my prayer and my challenge. Anyone have something to share now? If you do, I want to give you opportunity, Marcus.